Welcome to the dark side of love, where attraction doesn't knock politely before entering, where the lines you've spent years drawing around yourself are crossed in seconds, without warning, without apology, where you realize too late that the thing pulling you in isn't gentle, it's hunger, and once you feed it, there's no going back. He was trembling at first. I thought it was from the strain, the way his muscles flexed above me, the tendons in his neck pulled taut, his breath shallow and fractured against my cheek. But then I felt it. That kind of tremble that isn't just physical. It's restraint. It's the ache of holding something back for too long. His hands pressed into the sheets on either side of my head, his jaw locked tight like he needed to anchor himself, like letting go meant losing control completely. Every slow push inside me felt weighted, deliberate, as if he was trying to savor it, or maybe trying to convince himself to stop. But he didn't stop. I didn't let him. I wrapped my legs tighter around his hips, pulling him deeper until his breath broke into a low, desperate sound against my neck. His chest brushed mine with each measured movement, our skin damp, the scent of him clinging to me, clean sweat, a whisper of cologne, and that faint eucalyptus I'd come to recognize from his gym bag. I kept my eyes open the whole time. I wanted to see him like this. I wanted to remember exactly how it felt to let this happen here. With him, the one person I should never have let cross this line. David, my trainer. He was supposed to be my escape from the routines that choked me, from the slow, colorless life I'd been living for years. The gym was the only space in my week that felt like it belonged to me, and David was the man who pushed me through every last rep, spotted me when I collapsed onto the bench, corrected my form when I was one breath away from giving up, always respectful, always professional, until he wasn't. I'm 39, married, no kids, the kind of marriage where you could almost forget it's supposed to be romantic. We ran like parallel lines, close enough to see each other, never close enough to touch. We didn't fight. We didn't flirt. We just coexisted. I thought that was enough. David was 28, tall, steady, not loud like the other trainers who strutted around, more focused on themselves than their clients. He had this calm, almost surgical focus that made you want to follow directions, and that voice, low, steady, unshakable. He used to count my reps out loud, slow and measured. 6, 7, you've got more in you. Keep going. And I always did. Because of him. So how did we get here? How did I end up with my legs wrapped around him, nails in his shoulders, his body pressed so deep inside me I could feel his heartbeat against mine? It started 2 weeks earlier, the first shift. Weeks before that night. It was a Saturday session. The gym was almost empty, just the low hum of machines in the background and the steady thud of my heartbeat in my ears. I was halfway through a set of walking lunges, sweat trailing down my spine, my thighs shaking in protest. My leggings clung to me like a second skin, my sports bra soaked through. David crouched beside me, his eyes scanning my form like he always did. One hand slid to my thigh, the other pressed gently against my lower back. It wasn't unusual. He'd adjusted me 100 times before, but this time, he didn't move his hand away right away. His fingers were warm, firm, holding me in place, and when I glanced at him, his eyes weren't on my knees or my posture, they were on my mouth. It was a look I'd never seen from him before, not in all the months he'd been training me, like he was seeing me for the first time, not as a client, not as a body to perfect, but as a woman. The moment stretched too long, then he pulled back, clearing his throat. Sorry, your stance was collapsing, he said, his voice low and quick. I nodded like it was nothing, but my pulse didn't slow. We didn't mention it again. I went home, changed, told myself I'd imagined it, that it was a momentary slip, not the start of anything dangerous. But the next session, it was different. That day, before touching me, he asked, "You good with hands-on adjustments?" He never used to ask. I said yes, and when his hand finally touched me, light, brief, measured, it burned through me like a live wire. He didn't talk much that session, but I caught him watching me between sets, not checking my form, not in that casual trainer way, but in the way a man looks at a woman when he's thinking about what she'd taste like, and I hated myself for how much I liked it. That night, I texted him, just a simple, "Thanks for the session." 5 minutes later, he replied, "You crushed it. I've never seen you move like that." I stared at the message for too long before typing back. Must have been the motivation. His reply came fast. One word, dangerous. I didn't sleep much that night. 2 nights later, The line we'd been circling finally broke. It was late, the gym nearly empty again. He offered to walk me to my car. Said the lot was too dark. We stopped by my driver's side door. He didn't touch me, didn't lean in, just stood there, breathing like he'd been holding something in for months. I could have gotten in the car, driven away, pretended this wasn't building between us. But instead, I reached for his shirt, and just like that, it was over for both of us. We didn't make it to a bed. We didn't even make it past my couch, clothes half off, mouths open, breathless and greedy. He tried to stop twice, pulled back, said my name, shook his head like he was fighting himself, but each time, I pulled him in again, and when he pressed inside me slow, careful, his whole body trembling with restraint, I realized how long I'd been waiting for someone to want me like this. I didn't ask him to stop. I didn't want him to. The morning after he woke before the sun, for a second, I didn't know where I was. The room felt too warm, too still, the air heavy with the scent of skin, sweat, and something sweeter, muskier. Then it hit me. David's arm was draped across my stomach. His breathing was slow, steady, his chest pressed against my back like we'd been sleeping like this for years instead of just a few hours. His hand twitched once, like he was still holding me in his dreams. I stared at the ceiling, my body still, humming from what we'd done. There was no guilt in that first moment, only the echo of him, the weight of his body. The way his voice had dropped to a whisper when he'd said my name, the roughness of his hands on my hips. But then my phone buzzed on the coffee table, and just like that, the room turned colder. It was my husband, a text so routine it might as well have been a grocery list. What time will you be home tonight? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slid out from under David's arm as carefully as I could. He shifted but didn't wake. I gathered my clothes from the floor, pulling on my leggings and hoodie in silence. My mind a tight knot of what the hell did I just do. In the bathroom, I caught my reflection, hair tangled, lips swollen, faint marks on my neck that I could still feel under my fingertips. I should have felt shame, but all I felt was alive. When I came out, David was awake, sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees. His hair was messy, his shirt half buttoned. For a second, we just looked at each other, like two people standing on the edge of something they couldn't undo. Last night, he started, then stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck. That can't happen again. I nodded, even though my chest tightened at the words. Right, I said. Of course. But we both knew we were lying. I drove home with the windows down, the morning air sharp against my face. The house was quiet when I walked in, my husband already gone for work. The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee. The table was clean except for a folded newspaper and his mug in the sink. I stood there for a long time, staring at the mug, feeling the weight of two separate lives pressing against each other inside me. That night, I didn't tell him I'd worked out. I didn't tell him I'd been with David. We ate dinner, talked about nothing, watched TV in silence. But the whole time, my mind replayed the sound of David's breath, the way he'd whispered, "Don't stop," like it was a prayer. Back to the gym. Next time I saw David, it was almost unbearable. We didn't hug, didn't touch beyond what was necessary. But every time he adjusted my stance, my skin remembered. Straight in here, he said, his palm brushing the small of my back. It was a 2-second touch, but it left me dizzy. When our eyes met in the mirror, I saw it, the same hunger, barely contained. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't need to. It was already happening again in our heads. The weeks between after that night, something unspoken rooted itself between us. We still trained. Like always, squats, deadlifts, sprints, but every movement felt sharper, more aware. When he handed me a dumbbell, his fingers brushed mine a fraction too long. When he spotted me on the bench, his hands hovered just above my waist, close enough that I could feel the heat of them without contact. And every time our eyes met in the mirrors lining the gym wall, I felt the echo of his body against mine. Outside the gym, I tried to be normal. I cooked dinner. I answered my husband's questions. I even let him kiss me once or twice, though I couldn't stop comparing the press of his lips to the way David had taken my mouth like it was the only thing that could save him. Night, when my husband fell asleep beside me, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, my body remembering the way David's hands had mapped me like he was learning a new language. The Masaga 3 weeks later, it happened. I was halfway through my workday when my phone buzzed, a message from David. "I've got a late slot open tonight if you want an extra session." It was innocent on the surface, but I read it twice. my pulse jumping. We never trained that late. What time? I typed. 9. Jim will be dead. I stared at the screen. If I said yes, I knew exactly where this would lead, and still, my thumbs moved before my brain could catch up. See you then. The second crossing gym was nearly empty when I walked in. The lights felt dimmer than usual, the air heavier. David was leaning against the squat rack, arms crossed, watching me like I was the only person in the room. We didn't start with warm-ups. We didn't even pretend to focus on the workout. He guided me to the pull-up bar, his voice low. Grip here. When I reached up, my shirt lifted just enough for the edge of my sports bra to show. He stepped behind me, hands brushing my sides as he corrected my posture. My breath caught, and I knew if I turned to face him, we'd be done for. I turned. The kiss was rougher this time. No hesitation, no testing the waters, just his mouth on mine, his hands pulling me in like he'd been starving for weeks. We didn't make it far, just to the corner of the gym where the security cameras didn't reach. It was reckless. Desperate, the kind of touch you give when you know you might not get another chance. His breath was ragged against my ear. You have no idea what you do to me, he whispered, but I did, because he was doing the same thing to me. The pull-lifter. That night, there was no going back. We didn't even try to pretend anymore. Every session became an excuse, an hour of training that was really just circling each other like gravity, pulling two objects closer and closer until the collision was inevitable. He'd find reasons to touch me, adjust a strap on my glove, hold my hips in place during a stretch, stand behind me when I lifted, his breath warm against the back of my neck, and I let him. No, I wanted him to. The lies begin. It started small, telling my husband I had extra work, saying the gym had changed my training slot, but soon the lies became easier than the truth. I could look him in the eye and tell him I was going for a run, knowing full well I was headed to David's apartment. The more I lied, the less I felt guilty. Instead, I felt untouchable, like I was living two lives, both under my control, but deep down, I knew I was losing control. After horse and Friday night, David texted, "Gym's closing early. Come by my place instead." I didn't even think. I just grabbed my bag, told my husband I was meeting a friend for dinner, and drove across town. When he opened the door, he didn't smile. He just stepped aside, letting me in. His eyes already locked on me like I was prey. The first touch was almost violent in its urgency. Weeks of holding back dissolved in seconds, our mouths crashing together as his hands pushed my jacket off my shoulders. This time wasn't like the others. It wasn't just heat, it was need. We were devouring each other like we'd die if we stopped. Afterward, I lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the pulse in my chest slow. David was beside me, one arm draped over my waist. "This is getting dangerous," he murmured. I didn't answer, because I didn't want to admit that the danger was exactly what kept pulling me back, slipping. It wasn't just the gym anymore. It was everywhere. A quick stop by his apartment on my way home from errands. A lunch break that mysteriously ran an hour longer. The way my phone would buzz in my pocket during dinner and my heart would race before I even checked the name. I started timing my showers at home so my husband wouldn't notice the faint scent of David's cologne on my skin. I kept an extra hoodie in my car to hide the marks he left on my neck. I told myself I was being careful, but really, I was daring the world to notice. Almost caught on night. I came home later than usual. Too late. My husband was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "Long workout," he said, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "Yeah," I replied, dropping my bag by the door. David wanted to try a new routine. The moment his name left my mouth, I regretted it. My husband's brow lifted slightly. "You talk about him a lot lately." I forced a laugh, grabbing a glass of water just to have something to hold. "He's my trainer. Who else would I talk about?" He didn't press it, but his eyes followed me down the hall, and my pulse didn't slow until I locked the bathroom door. "The hook gets deeper." Next time I saw David, I told him about it. His expression darkened, but not with guilt, with something sharper. "Maybe I like that he's noticing," he said quietly, his thumb tracing along my jaw. "Means you're not just mine in private." The way he said mine made something dangerous spark inside me, because he was right. Part of me wanted my husband to see. Part of me wanted the truth to detonate, just so I wouldn't have to hide anymore. Public risk. It happened in the gym bathroom, middle of the afternoon, a few people still working out, music thumping through the walls. We slipped in, locked the door, and kissed like we hadn't seen each other in months instead of just yesterday. The sound of someone walking past made me freeze, but David just pressed a finger to my lips, grinning. The thrill was intoxicating, knowing a single knock on that door could end everything. And maybe that was the problem. I was starting to crave the risk more than the man. The lines blurred. If it wasn't just my trainer anymore, he was my first thought in the morning, my last before sleep, the man whose voice could pull me out of any mood, the one whose absence made my chest ache in a way my husband's never did. I stopped thinking in terms of husband and lover. It was just David, and the life I had to navigate around him. The fantasy on nights my husband was out with friends or working late. I'd imagine what it would be like if David were the one walking through the door instead. We'd cook together. We'd laugh without watching our words. I'd be able to touch him in the open. No more stolen moments or locked doors. But every time I let myself dream like that, reality cut in. David never talked about a future. He never asked for more. He wanted me when he wanted me, and then he'd disappear until the next time. The first crack-on evening, after we'd been at his place for hours, I asked, "What are we doing, David? Where does this go?" He was quiet for a beat, then smirked, like I'd told a joke. "Why does it have to go anywhere? We have what we have." The words stung more than I expected. I turned away, pretending to check my phone so he wouldn't see my face, pulling back for the first time. I skipped a session, then another. David noticed. He texted, called, even came into the gym when he wasn't scheduled just to bump into me. When I finally agreed to meet, the air between us was heavier than usual. "You're avoiding me," he said. "I'm trying to think," I replied. "Think about what?" His tone was sharp now. "If this is worth it." His grip tightened. Shift was instant. He stepped closer, his hand curling around the back of my neck, not hard, but firm enough to make my breath catch. "Don't start acting like you can just walk away," he said, low and dangerous. "You're in this as deep as I am, and God help me." Part of me liked hearing that. The obsession turns dark after that. It wasn't about choice anymore. We were back to meeting constantly in the gym, his apartment, even my car in dark parking lots. But something had changed. I caught him checking my phone once. He'd make comments about the clothes I wore when I wasn't with him. Sometimes he'd get quiet, watching me with a look I couldn't read, like he was weighing whether he could trust me. I told myself it was just passion, but deep down, I knew it was control. The slip that shatters everything. It happened on a Sunday. My husband and I were having lunch at a small cafe when a shadow fell over our table. I looked up. "David." He smiled, not the warm smile I knew, but something sharper. "Small world," he said. The conversation was polite, short, but when he left, my husband's eyes were still on me. "Do you know him outside the gym?" he asked. I forced a laugh. "Of course not." But my hands were shaking under the table. "The message that ends with 'at night,'" David texted me. "I like seeing you with him. Reminds me what's really mine." And for the first time, his words didn't excite me. They scared me. Paranoia after that calf run-in. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Every time my husband's phone buzzed, I wondered if someone had told him. Every time David texted, I hesitated before opening it, afraid of what he might say. I started checking my rearview mirror on the drive home. Not because I thought my husband was following me, because I thought David might be. David changed. This man who once felt like an escape now felt like a shadow I couldn't outrun. His texts weren't flirty anymore. They were demanding. "Where are you? Who are you with? Answer me." Once, when I didn't reply for an hour, he showed up at the gym unannounced, pacing by the front desk until I appeared. "You don't just disappear on me," he said, jaw tight. I laughed it off. In public, but inside, my stomach twisted. The breaking point on night, my husband confronted me. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse, he just said, "If there's something I should know, tell me now." My throat went dry. I could hear David's words in my head. "You're in this as deep as I am." So I lied again, and this time, the lie tasted like ash in my mouth. The last meeting he told David we needed to stop, that it was getting too dangerous. He just looked at me for a long moment, then smiled slow, almost pitying. "You think you can just erase me? Like this never happened?" I didn't answer. I just turned to leave. His hand caught my wrist. The grip was firm, possessive. "Don't forget, you came to me. You wanted this." Then he let go, and I walked out, not daring to look back. The fallout for a week, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no sudden appearances. I almost let myself believe it was over, until my husband came home one evening, phone in hand, face pale. He didn't speak at first. He just held out the screen. It was a message from David. To him. No words, just a single photo. Me. In David's bed. The enemy husband didn't shout, didn't throw anything. He just stared at me, eyes full of something worse than anger, disappointment, and as I stood there, watching the life I knew disintegrate in silence, I realized something. David hadn't just taken my loyalty, he'd taken the one thing I could never get back, the version of myself that believed I was in control. I used to think betrayal was a single moment, a choice, a mistake you could point to and say, that's when it happened. But it's not. It's slower than that. It's the little compromises. The glances you let last too long. The lies you tell because they're easier than the truth. And by the time you realize how far you've gone, you're already gone. David didn't ruin my marriage. I did. Just one more time. He'll never know. Every moment I chose the fire over the safety of home. I lit the match myself. But David, he knew exactly when to let me burn. And exactly when to walk away, leaving nothing but ash. People ask what happened after. The truth? I survived. But survival isn't the same as living. Because once you've been owned by someone, body, mind, soul, you never really belong to yourself again. You spend the rest of your life trying to claw back pieces of who you were. And the worst part, you never get all of them back.